Hello ladies and gentlemen, in this video tutorial I'm going to explain you something else. What means something else? If you were waiting to the airbrush part, this is the moment. So I'm going to explain you how to paint the next steps, some details, and then I'm going to paint or blend with the airbrush. I know some of you are scared about the airbrush and some of you love the airbrush. So in that case, I'm going to explain you in an easy way, remember. If you remember the previous video tutorial, I explained you that if you want to get a green more saturated, you can paint with more yellow in the mix or blue. So for that, with the brush, we will play with these two colors. Maybe not a pure yellow, but a lot of yellow with a bit of green and pure blue, just to show you some differences. In that case, now with the brush, I'm painting some layers else that I need. What kind of layers? If you remember, I explained you that you have to create your ceiling to represent the value of the light, because the main light should be the OSL, in that case with the green color, a saturated green color. Because I would like to explain you different kind of OSL, I've painted the fire on the bottom, the hand and her eyes with different OSL. So in this video tutorial I would like to show you different finish about these lights. For example, on the hand you will find more white colors, but all of them saturated with more yellow or blue. On the bottom you will see the fire, the flames with more saturated green, but if you feel that you need something else, I'm going to explain you then how to do it with airbrush for sure. And on her eyes or head, I played with different colors inside of the hair, inside of the eyes, in the mouth, different colors, just that, to represent different ideas with this OSL, different values and different colors, always with greens, but with different kind of greens. And as for the blue, if you see in the video tutorial, you will find more light than I should have. And why? This have a reason. The reason is because sometimes you paint with less light than you should. So for that reason I decide to add more light than I should use, because then with airbrush I can bring down this highest light to keep the correct light that I need. However, if you start to paint with the perfect light, in your mind this blue it's perfect, so and you keep it there, and then you blend with airbrush, maybe it's a low or flat blue without contrast, and then when you play with the airbrush you won't have enough area or gradient to work on it. So for that I prefer just cross the ceiling and paint with more contrast than you should, and then just bring down a bit if you need it, because maybe in some places you will need bring down a bit, and some of them will be perfect, so you don't need to change anything. In that case works, and in that case it's really interesting the non-metallics. If you want to represent something metallic, you should keep the white from this metallic in tiny points. As you can see now, I'm working on that kind of materials. For example, the shoulder pad, I continue working with layers just to add a bit of light, is to represent the bright from this metallic. Just that. But then for sure I'm going to blend with airbrush. Maybe not everything, maybe I want to blend the highest light, but the midtones and shadows for sure. And if you see well, you will check that I didn't paint with exactly the same contrast on the skin than on the non-metallic. Why? Because if you want to represent different materials with exactly the same colors, or more or less exactly the same colors, you have to create something different. In that case will be the value of the light. And because I always told you that the face is the most important part on a miniature, and you are painting on a sketch, remember that this is a sketch. Continue being a sketch. So you have to continue painting on that. It's because I thought that I need something else on the hair, because only with this black color or green and with a light inside of the hair is not enough to me. So for that reason I decided to add this blue or bluish outside of the hair to represent different colors. A new color, just that. To create more information. The light from the ambient, it's really important. But the main light should be the OSL. If you keep areas where you don't have nothing else, so you only have green to the OSL and the rest of that it's a flat color, will look like you didn't paint it. So for that reason I started to play with this color, because I need more information, but I can't use green because it will be exactly the same, so it will be boring. So if you want to add something else, play with this color, but desaturated in that case. As you see, it's like a gray with a bit of blue, just that. So after all of this, it's the moment to start to use the airbrush, your lovely airbrush. And in that case, can you see, I use this kind of yellow with a bit of green maybe, but it's yellow basically. So I'm going to blend with this color. Where I decide to paint with this color. The idea is not blend everything with exactly the same tone. Now I would like to represent something else, to have different finish, not on the... If you paint the flames, everything with the same light or the same layers, it's like in the other previous video tutorials I explained you that A, B, C. At the end, everything have 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers, and maybe 4 layers. Just that. So in that case, if you want to create something more interesting, more organic with these flames, just blend with this saturated color in some places. Some of them will have more blue, some of them more yellow, and some of them the basic color, the base coat. Just that. It's an interesting way to do it. And because you want to represent an OSL on everything, you have to do it on her face too. Maybe in that moment you are super scared, but don't worry, this is really interesting, because the idea will be add more water and thinner and just a bit of paint. For example, like a 95 dilution, like water, and 5% paint. And you will paint maybe with 15 or 20 layers, but will be more interesting than if you create filters, painting layer over layer, than if you paint straight with the perfect color. Because if you make a mistake with this dilution, 95 water and 5% paint, maybe you will need to paint 3 or 4 layers to start to see differences. So if you didn't paint in the perfect way, in the correct area, don't worry, just change, paint in another place, because nobody will see. If you like it, just continue adding. However, if you paint with 50-50, for example, or like a base coat, and you make a mistake, you paint or spray where you didn't or where you shouldn't spray, you need to repaint everything with your brush. So for that reason, I recommend you paint with 90% paint, 90% water and 10% paint, or 95% water and thinner for sure, and 5% paint. With this dilution, you can play as filters and play with exactly the same color in some places to create the ambient. Because remember, you are painting an OSL, so you have to represent the light from this OSL. And if you have 3 kind of OSL on the same model, for sure you have to create reflections from this light in another places, in another materials, and won't be exactly the same color, because the metallic maybe reflect more than the clothes, and the skin maybe reflect a bit, but never as the metallic. So this is interesting because we'll be just paint with maybe 10 layers on the skin, maybe 8 layers or 7 layers on the clothes, and maybe 20 or 25 on the metallic, just to get or absorb more color, just that. What happens if you paint over a blue color? Just you will tint and move to green, different kind of green, so it will be perfect. When you play with greens as main color and then you want to add tones with yellow or blue, it will be perfect because it will be super easy. Remember, I would like to explain you this in the easiest way to do it. So in that case, if you play with different yellows or different blues, will be perfect. However, be careful with magenta or red or maybe orange or maybe violet or purple, because all of these have magenta inside, the complementary color from this light. So you won't dirt the light. The light should be clean and powerful, saturated. So if you play with blues, they will move and you will saturate the color, but will be colder, just that. And if you play with yellow, you will saturate the green, but will be warmer, just that, nothing else. However, if you paint with something with magenta inside, be careful where will you blend, because maybe you will tint in places where you shouldn't. And if you use just blue or yellow, this is the example. So you can play and get different greens, different ambience. So perfect, because in some moments maybe you don't feel that this is a shadow, but maybe the temperature of this looks like a shadow. So it's perfect because you are playing with color and you get this volume and you don't have to use a shadow. The shadow only to the places where you have to add a shadow, but you need to reinforce the volumes to have a powerful on the shapes. As you see, I'm adding some layers to get something darker, or just to move the temperature, or just to move a bit the color, just that with this kind of glazes. You will see on the video tutorial where I'm painting, because you will see something like bright, shiny. So this is the place where I'm working. I know some of you are scared now, painting the face. For example, something interesting that maybe you didn't think about that will be create a shadow on the flames. I know, flames should be the lightest part. The perfect light, the contrast should be just powerful, everything with light. But how you make this light? You need to create a high contrast between light and shadow. But if you add shadows as black, you will dirt the light, so you can't do it. However, if you use blues to reinforce some shadows, you will get something higher with a strong contrast to get these volumes, and you will play with a blue color, so you will change the temperature, just that, and you will get more contrast on that, but always will look like green because you are playing with different greens with this blue, just that. So blue to reinforce some shadows to get this contrast, it's perfect, but only saturated blues or saturated yellows, remember that. it's the key. And then when you have everything done about the ambient, about the light, about the colors, the tones, the nuances that you want to add, it's the moment to add some places with something darker, with black and blue, for example, to reinforce some areas desaturated, because you want to play with areas super saturated, the OSL, and some places desaturated, and black is the perfect color to do it. Not everything, but some places. Check the trigger, the way I use the trigger to blend, okay? It's maybe the key. And find the angle. Remember that I always explain that you have to start from the bottom to the top. And this is a trick that Vanessa told me that I should show you, but I didn't want to do it. So here you have it. This is just blue tack, just to cover the eyes, because I'm going to use the airbrush to do or paint a makeup on her face close to her eyes, because as I explained you before, you have to create a frame with a desaturated and dark color around the area where you want to represent the OSL. So in that case, as you can see, I'm painting with black to represent this makeup. And then when you remove the blue tack, the eyes are perfect. And looks more interesting, with more powerful. It's just play with the contrast between light and saturated and the shadow desaturated as a frame, just that. So now it looks like fluor. Now is the moment to use the brush again. Some of you asking me, okay, I finished with the airbrush, but I don't like it. I don't know why. So I need something else, because when I see your model, looks like you have something else, not only the airbrush. It's true. This is the moment. When you have finished the airbrush, it's the moment to paint again with your brush. But remember, you have done 99% of your model. Your sketch is done. So to me, if you keep it there with this finished, it's perfect. But if you feel that you need something else, that part it's to you. You have to paint again with your brush, but just tiny areas. Tiny. Remember, you will paint the 1% of your model. So it's like don't paint. But it's true that if you reinforce a bit the shadow, the light, you repaint some places of the edging, the edge highlights, you play with the inks, you blend something else with your brush, you add different midtones that with the airbrush you can do it. All of this tiny stuff, these tiny effects or these tiny results or finished, it's the different. So I think it's the best way to get a really interesting model. Use the brush again now. But remember, you're painting only 1% of your model, nothing else. If you paint more, you are removing information that you made it. So if you don't have 99% your model and you have like a 50-50, please paint more with your brush before you use the airbrush, or blend more with your airbrush, because that area, that part, it's only to paint highest points, edge highlights, some colors, but only 1%. nothing else. The rest of that you should have done. If you see, I'm using all the time the tip of my point to paint some details, just that. Remember that you will decide where you finish. If you feel that it's done, it's done. That project, it's really hard, but I explain you in an easy way. So I think if you try to do it, you will get a really awesome results. But if you can't have exactly the same results as me, don't worry, because you tried and you improved. And with the next one, you will paint much better than this one. So everything is good. So this was everything on this video tutorial. I hope you have enjoyed watching this and learning. So I hope see you in the next video tutorial, because will be the last one to finish that model. So I don't have anything to say. Bye bye.